Hyliion is another one of those companies that, along with Tesla, Nikola, and a few others, have a polarizing effect on shareholders and consumers. There seems to be about an equal number of supporters and detractors, and that can make it difficult to get good information upon which to make educated decisions about the technology and the company. Whether you love it or hate it, Hyliion's natural gas-powered electric range extender truck, called the ERX, is in the final stages of development and testing. The company says it'll be coming to market later this year. Is it a viable alternative to pure battery electric? Will it help us to get through the transition from diesel to some other form of zero-emissions truck? Let us know what you think in the comments below. In just a moment, you'll meet the guy behind the ERX, Hyliion founder and CEO Thomas Healy. If you haven't already, please give us a like and poke that subscribe button. And in case you're new to the channel, there's lots of great trucking industry coverage on HDT's website, truckinginfo.com. This is HDT Talks Trucking. I'm Jim Park. We'll be back with Thomas Healy right after this.
Scraper Systems by Right Height is North America's leading name for automated rooftop snow removal from truck fleets. Safely clear 24 inches of snow and ice in less than 30 seconds. Scraper Systems fleet plows help reduce winter risks, protect your brand, and get your fleet on the road quickly after a snowstorm. Machines are available to ship today. Contact scrapersystems.com for more information.
So we're here at Hyliion Incorporated's manufacturing facility in Austin, Texas. I've just gotten out of my first ride in an ERX truck. With me now is Thomas Healy, the CEO of Hyliion. He was my guide on my first test drive. Thomas, thanks a lot for the ride. It was a really eye-opening experience.
No, thanks for coming down here again. This isn't your first time to Hyliion, but
second rodeo here at Hyliion.
But it's your first time in an ERX.
Indeed, it was. First time I was at this building, it was still wide open under construction, just open doors. So you've come a long way in that 4 to 5 years since I was last here.
Now we're even in a phase of we're expanding even more, and we just rented the space next door as well, or something.
It's a good way to be, right?
Yeah, no, things are great. I mean, the momentum towards electrification is there, and as we get further and further into this shift of going to electric, people are realizing that this journey isn't as easy as they thought it was going to be, and costs are difficult, infrastructure is difficult, and I think our solution really shines where those are the things we're solving for.
Well, the thing I think is rather elegant about this solution, and I'm not hyping it here necessarily, is you bring all the benefits of a battery electric vehicle to the table without the problem with the infrastructure. Your infrastructure is under the hood.
Right.
Now, we have some issues with natural gas, at least some people do. We're overcoming those or getting people over that hump. But I can buy one of your trucks tomorrow and go down the road at zero emissions, save for the electricity required or the natural gas required to produce the charge.
Right. Yeah, and a few things within that. So one is, natural gas, right? And for anyone that's in the industry, I think people know that was a difficult thing about a decade ago when people tried adopting natural gas vehicles. They found that vehicles were underpowered. Drivers didn't like them. If you had a lot of diesel trucks and a parking lot of diesel trucks with natural gas trucks out there, everyone was going to jump in the diesels first, and your nat gases were going to be sitting there, right? That's not the case with our vehicle, right? Because the reason drivers didn't like natural gas trucks is because they're underpowered, right? That was the biggest issue. Now, there were some maintenance issues back then too. Those have been overcome. But as you said, we can give you that higher horsepower, higher torque than the diesel even has. But yet we're doing it with a range extender that runs on natural gas.
Well, you can see that in the test drive video, but the natural gas engine is not driving the truck.
Right.
So, as you said, the traditional power complaints and the performance complaints that some drivers had with it are not issues because there is no direct connection between the flywheel on the natural gas engine and the drive axle.
Right. Yeah.
That all goes away with the battery.
Yeah, if you think about, when we were looking at the truck standing next to it, if you just look at the rear axles, if you look at the frame rails and where the batteries are mounted, that looks identical to a BEV plug-in truck, right? There's even a plug there.
There's a plug on
that
there. Yep.
we showed you. So that's all the same. Now, granted, we have a much smaller battery pack than a lot of BEV trucks do, because our goal is not cram as much energy into the pack as possible and get as long of a range. Our goal is more just the battery's there kind of as a buffer. And so then you add the power plant under the hood, and to start off, we're using nat gas, and we've laid out a roadmap where over time we can evolve into hydrogen. We think that that's really going to be the right solution for over-the-road trucking. I think my hypothesis on this, I think we'll get to a point where we can drive 500, 1,000 miles off of a battery pack. But the problem is the grid's not going to be there to support the recharging of it, and fleets aren't going to want to pay for the grid to recharge these vehicles either.
And that's going to slow down the implementation of BEVs, which ultimately is not going to do us any favors, is it?
Right.
We want them as soon as we can.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't see that the grid is changing all that quickly, right? I think we've got a long ways to go until we've got consistent, renewable electricity to be able to power things like electric semi-trucks, and then even just to actually build out the chargers. I mean, it's big money. It's millions and millions of dollars to put these chargers in place, and fleets aren't going to pay that. No,
it's a little bit different in getting your Flying J fleet card and going about energy procurement, right?
Yeah. Diesel trucks, you got no infrastructure costs, right? You just buy the truck and you're going.
Go. Yeah. Well, natural gas is kind of in a regulatory limbo right now. CARB and EPA don't seem to like it that much, trying to push people to BEVs at the expense of diesel, of course. Where is natural gas on the long term? I mean, is it going to be around 10 or 20 years from now? Do you think the regulators are going to accept it as a good alternative to diesel and a quicker pathway to battery electric? Or is it just going to be a no-go?
Yeah, so I don't see a future of the country where we're not heavily using natural gas, frankly, at least for many years to come here. And so from that standpoint, we should be using it in semi-trucks as well. And in terms of, from a political environment, is it being accepted or not? I think there's been some very strong proof points, specifically recently, that have shown solutions like Hyliion's are being accepted. So you look at the Inflation Reduction Act. Our vehicle qualifies for the same exact amount of money as a BEV plug-in truck qualifies for and a fuel cell truck qualifies for. So to me, that means, we're kind of federal, push is saying, hey, use a Hyliion system just as much as they, want everyone to use BEVs or fuel cells. And then out of California specifically, the ZEV credits, our vehicle is going to qualify for 75% of a credit versus a plug-in truck would qualify for 100%. So, all right, they're saying, hey, we're not quite as, as good as a plug-in, but you're close. And then, and this can be a whole, we could spend hours talking about this one, but, my pet peeve is, I think we need to really look at things from a well-to-wheel standpoint. Like this whole philosophy of, it's just what comes out of the tailpipe is all that matters is so wrong, right? Of a philosophy. If you're going to use a coal-fired power plant or a petroleum-based power plant even to charge an EV, you're not doing something positive for the environment.
Well, with natural gas, especially renewable natural gas, a lot of people don't make that distinction, and I think the natural gas word conjures up images of fossil fuel, methane venting into the night, what have you. Renewable is carbon negative in most cases, sometimes extremely carbon negative, especially when you draw it from landfill or manure ponds or what have you. But you still have the traditional emissions, NOx and particulate matter. That's one thing the regulators are dead set against, but natural gas is already, was it 80, 90% cleaner than diesel at that stage? So, I mean, what more do you need to do to prove out natural gas?
Yeah. So, and maybe if I can just step back for any, viewers that aren't familiar with RNG, because up until a handful of years ago, I wasn't either. It's basically a way of using what would have been pollution and using that as a fuel on board the vehicle to run the truck. So, it's basically capturing methane that would have come off of landfills, wastewater treatment plants, dairy farms, and taking that methane and pumping it into the pipelines to use it as a fuel now. So basically, it would have been pollution. So it was going to go off into the atmosphere as a harmful chemical, but instead now we're going to use it to run a truck, and what comes out of the tailpipe is a lot cleaner. And so that from that standpoint, that's what's giving us this ability to be net carbon negative, because if it had just gone off into the atmosphere, that would have been worse for the environment than what's coming out of the tailpipe. So from that standpoint, I mean, if you're below zero from an emissions standpoint, I don't know that you can really beat that one, right? And if you look at the grid, only about 20% of the grid is coming from renewable sources right now. So, such as wind, solar, and hydro. So we think RNG makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Thomas, when it comes to natural gas and various credits that fleets and OEMs are looking for, we don't really have a cap and trade system in place yet. It's coming, but OEs are certainly concerned with credit. Mm-hmm. Are they going to get the credits they need to build a truck like yours? Or in fact, where will the credits go with a truck like yours? Is it your credit or is it the OEM credit? Does the fleet get any credit for buying a truck like that?
It's a great question. So the credits we've been focusing on have been the 2 CARB mandates that are coming out. So there's the Advanced Clean Truck, which is the mandate being put on the OEM, and then there's the Advanced Clean Fleet, which is the mandate being put on the trucking fleet. So Advanced Clean Truck, and by the way, both of these, 'cause why wouldn't you call them different things, right? But both of these qualify for ZEV credits, but some of them go to the OEM, some of them go to the fleet. So our goal is these credits are going to the OEM, not to Hyliion, and similarly going to the fleet and not to Hyliion. So for the OEM mandate, we qualify for 75% of a ZEV credit. So just a little bit less than a plug-in vehicle or a fuel cell truck. But for the fleet mandate one, we're actually going to qualify for 100% of a ZEV credit based on how it's written today. So for fleet, there's no greater benefit of going to a plug-in truck over our truck.
Do you hear many fleets talking about or expressing concerns that natural gas isn't going to be around in 10 years if the regulators have their way and make it go away? I can't see it happening, but there's talk, right?
I can't see it happening either. And one of the things actually I envision being an issue coming up here is there are these big pushes to move to electric, and fleet excitement is there. Like every fleet you talk to is saying, yeah, I want to try this. I want to be a part of this shift.
The shippers are pushing it too.
Yeah. Yep. And companies are coming out with, saying, hey, I need to hit this, net zero by 2040 or things like that. Right. So the push is there, but we're now in that phase where like the rubber's meeting the road kind of a deal. Right. And I don't think it's going as swimmingly as some, people expected in the industry of fleets are getting into these trucks. They're seeing range issues with plug-in trucks. They're seeing infrastructure issues. So, what this is, I think, making the trucking world see is that we have to be very, very thoughtful as to where these types of vehicles get deployed. Deploy a BEV plug-in truck in an intercity application where it goes home at night, it can plug in, doesn't need a super fast recharger. Makes total sense. That's where that truck should be used. Over the road, long haul trucking, you need a solution like ours, or you need a hydrogen fuel cell truck. But what we're finding is fleets are really struggling with that infrastructure question as well as the cost of operation question. And those are two things that using a nat gas range extender truck, you have significant benefits there. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see fleets being very resistant to adopting a fuel cell truck until costs come down and infrastructure gets built out.
Yeah, well, they're what, 400,000 to 600,000 for a fuel cell at this point? There's only, 8 of them around maybe? But they're not cheap, are they? Yeah,
the trucks cost a lot more, right? And maybe just as a high level. So what we've seen, rough numbers, our trucks, and this all is inclusive of the IRA credits that are coming out. But what we're finding is a fuel cell truck will come to market $500,000-$600,000. A BEV plug-in truck is going to come into market at around the mid $400,000. Our truck we're expecting, or it is going to come out to be in the high 300,000s. And so when you compare it against a diesel, all of us are more expensive, right? I mean, yes, diesel truck prices have gone up a lot, but still more expensive.
Yep.
Then what you need to look at is, well, what's the cost of operation going to be? And so for a fuel cell truck, hydrogen costs are around $10 a kilogram or $10 a gallon ballpark right now. Plugging into the grid and recharging will be around $4 a gallon. Using renewable natural gas will be in the dollar range. So we're not only going to be significantly less than the other alternative fuels, but we're also significantly less than diesel from a fuel cost. So what we've seen is if you just run the math of kind of upfront vehicle cost and then you extrapolate out what's your fuel cost over time, you'll see about a 3-year ROI with our solution compared to a diesel.
You talked earlier about migrating to hydrogen as well, first with a internal combustion hydrogen engine of some sort, and eventually a fuel cell. How far out is that?
Yeah, so
in Hyliion's point of view?
Yeah, so we've laid out a three-stage roadmap. So the first is a natural gas ICE engine. That's the power plant on board. Step number 2 is the Carnot generator, which is a new fuel-agnostic generator we just acquired from GE. And then step number 3 will be to go to the fuel cell solution. So the Carnot, I'll start with first the ICE engine. So that's going into start of production late this year, or late 2023. We're almost in late 23 is when it goes into production. We then expect a few years after that is when we'll release the Carnot solution in production. And then on fuel cell, we haven't put a timetable to it yet. But what we have said is like our goal is by the time that infrastructure is built out, by the time fleets are really moving over to hydrogen and really want a hydrogen solution, we'll be able to have a fuel cell solution ready by then.
Okay.
With all that being said, though, we actually see the Carnot generator as being one of the biggest differentiators for us because not only can it operate on about 20 different fuels, it can also operate at a much higher efficiency than an ICE engine and actually than even a fuel cell can operate. So from that standpoint, we will have a hydrogen solution with the Carnot as well.
What is a Carnot generator? Sounds like a 100-mile-an-hour carburetor to me.
Flux capacitor.
Flux capacitor, yeah. That crossed my mind.
Sometimes when the engineers are explaining it to me, it feels like that. But no, it's actually really neat. So it's a linear heat generator, and so what it is basically.
Okay, I'm checking it right now.
Yeah. So it brings fuel in. It can bring in nat gas. Can bring in hydrogen. It can bring in conventional fuels as well, like diesels. And then what happens is it uses that fuel to produce heat, and then that heat drives a linear generator, which has an electric motor in it to produce electricity, and that's the genset. So.
Okay.
This technology, first off, like linear generators, not a new thing. They've been around for many, many decades. But we acquired it out of GE, and there's two things that GE really advanced on it. The first was we actually use the same fuel injection technology that's used in the GE aviation engines, the jet engines. We're using that in this. So efficiency-wise, it's fantastic.
Okay.
The second benefit is it also has components that are made through 3D additive manufacturing, so 3D printing. And so from a efficiency standpoint, we can rethink the way that some of these components are designed and get much better performance out of them as opposed to conventional manufacturing. So you couple those two things together, and now you got a solution that is fuel agnostic and has a very high efficiency.
A couple of questions about the truck while we've got Thomas's expertise here. The storage tanks and batteries on board. Mm-hmm. You've got the worst of both worlds here in terms of weight. How do you justify the two of them, and roughly what does that truck weigh? What's the curb weight of the truck we were driving earlier? Yeah.
So we're still locking in what's going to be the actual go-to-market weight of the vehicle. So we haven't come out with a number yet, but to put some ballparks to it. So it will be heavier than a diesel truck because, as you mentioned, we kind of have both systems. But we're expecting that it is going to be lighter than a conventional BEV plug-in truck because we're not needing that massive battery pack that a BEV needs to do the range. So from that standpoint, it will be less than a BEV, more than a diesel. We do also get the 2,000-pound government weight allotment. That means we can actually haul
natural gas.
Yeah, get the nat gas weight allowance. So now we can actually have a GVW or gross vehicle weight of 82,000 pounds as opposed to 80. So more to come on that, but there is a weight penalty because of the additional components, but not as bad as some of the other solutions.
Can you scale down the the natural gas tankage?
Yeah.
You've got 4 on the truck we drove. Could you get away with 2 or 3 if your operating range was such?
You absolutely can, and you hit the nail on the head. So we've the vehicle you just drove and the vehicle that we're first bringing to market is it's the bells and whistles, right? I mean, it's got the biggest natural gas storage tanks. And so from that standpoint, that's what's allowing us to get that up to 1,000 miles of range. But not all fleets are going to need that. So we can go to this truck has a 175 DGE. We could go to a 135. There's tanks, I think, as small as 60 or 65 DGE, diesel gallon equivalent. So if a fleet is more weight sensitive, we can just scale down the size of the tanks.
Yep. And I suppose if you look at it this way, if you want all the advantages of a BEV, a couple of natural gas storage tanks give you 75 miles, give or take, of BEV operation. So if you're in a non-attainment zone like California, and they don't want emissions trucks, you've got 75 miles worth of non-emissions operation, right?
Yeah. So just in the batteries, we have 75 miles, and then anything in the nat gas tanks is above and beyond that.
What do you use for the natural gas engine? What's your power plant under the hood right now?
So we're using the Cummins engine. The go-to-market solution is the 12-liter Cummins engine. So this isn't a brand new engine. This is one that has been on the market. And we've actually been working with Cummins on the big undertaking right now is we're going through the CARB certification process. And so before we bring this into production, we obviously need that cert. We announced a handful of months ago that we're actually jointly doing it with Cummins, which has been a big help because Cummins is, they know engines inside and out. It is their engine at the end of the day. And so we're going through that process right now.
Will the 15-liter, their new 15-liter, be coming on board when it's ready to go?
Yeah, so our plan will be to evolve with the Cummins portfolio. And so we're working with them. They're still, they haven't come out with all the details yet of kind of when engines are going to be changed and new ones are coming online. But our plan will be we'll continue to evolve with the Cummins portfolio. And then as we go forward, we'll even bring in our own generator in the car now.
So the truck I drove today was a Peterbilt 579. I see a bunch of Cascadias, P4 Cascadias out there all suited up. Those obviously are two OEMs that you're in league with so far. How are the rest of them coming along? Are they signed up for this new powertrain?
Yeah, so with our hybrid system, we've actually installed that on all the major truck OEMs. So both the PACCAR brands, Peterbilt, Kenworth, and then Freightliner, Volvo, Navistar as well. With the Hypertruck system, we're actually going to go to market on the Peterbilt 579. And we've been able to develop a great relationship with Peterbilt. Some of the questions you were asking around, how are the credits going to work? Peterbilt has been fantastic to work with to kind of go through all that, right? Because there's hurdles like, in order for the credit to go to the OEM, the OEM has to put the final VIN on the vehicle. Like there's things to work. Yeah. It's not the most streamlined thing, in the beginning. So we've been able to work through a lot of that with Peterbilt, still going through that process and working with them on how do we get the trucks kind of built best to be able to be ready to have a Hyliion system installed. Now, for anyone in the industry, the way this process works is you buy full vehicles from the OEM, you tear all the stuff off and you put your system on. That's how everyone starts. And then you get into a point where the OEM starts decontenting the truck and shipping it to you. Then they'll put some of the components on for you, and then eventually you get to being online. So our goal is to follow that same progression with Peterbilt and the other OEMs, and start at mod centers for upfits as well. That's something that we plan on doing, and then long-term goal is this is an online solution.
So if I wanted to buy one today, an ERX truck today, who do I talk to, Peterbilt or you?
Good question. So to launch, Hyliion will be the one selling the complete asset, and so. You come to Hyliion and we'll go through the process with you. We set out the sales team to fulfill the first 200 orders earlier this year, and they came back oversubscribed on it, which was always good.
Nice.
So we
nice
booked
problem
out.
to have.
Yeah, no, it's the fleet interest has been. It's good. And even actually it's growing as fleets see some of the hurdles with other electric solutions. They're now saying, oh, well, that Hyliion solution doesn't have that problem. So no, that's worked out well. But so initial trucks will be sold through us, and then eventually we'll work to actually moving the model to where we'll sell the powertrain to the OEM, and then the OEM will just have us as a data book option.
One last question, Thomas, and I'll let you go. Hyliion started life as an electric trailer maker. You had an electric axle under a trailer. You thought a little extra propulsion, push it up the hill. Conversations I've had recently with the transportation refrigeration manufacturers, they're ripping their hair out, kind of figure out how they're going to get enough energy to drive a truck reefer. Yep. Are you going to get back into the game anytime soon to help those folks out? So
we haven't put it back on our product roadmap officially. Now, we do own many of the patents that are in that space.
You heard it here first, folks.
So no, we have many patents in that area, but powering reefers, I think, is something we want to participate in long term. Whether that even just be like, if you look at the Hypertruck, there's no reason why we can't supply electricity from our natural gas generator back to the reefer to power it. Or maybe down the road we break out one of the trailer axles from a while back. We still got one of them out in the shop, the original. But yeah, no, it's a we obviously still see value there, and we feel like we got pretty good coverage on the IP side.
Great. Well, Thomas, thanks for the sharing your insights with us.
Thanks for coming here, driving the truck. Hopefully it was a good experience.
Don't forget to subscribe to Heavy Duty Trucking's YouTube channel and give us a like. That helps other people find the content you just enjoyed. Check out our other social media channels too. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And remember, there's lots of great written content about the trucking industry on our website, truckinginfo.com. I'm Jim Park. Thanks for watching.